Yo, Offset just obliterated whatever was left of his public image, and he did it to himself, on camera, in HD. The man went on Instagram Live, made threats that would scare a hitman, then 24 hours later he's getting carried out a casino parking lot with a bullet in him. And while he's bleeding, Cardi B is climbing into Stefon Diggs' white sports car after a sold-out show. Bro really woke up, declared war on an NFL receiver, and signed his own career death certificate in the same week. Stick with me till the end, because what the headlines are hiding is wilder than what they are showing. Kiari Kendrell Cephas, Offset, the former Migo himself, went on a multi-day Instagram Live tirade between April 5th and April 7th, 2026, where he openly threatened Stefon Diggs, claimed Cardi's newborn was his, and said he wanted to end Diggs' football career by shooting him in the knees. The lives ran on his verified IG account, the same platform the divorce judge had already warned both sides to chill on. Bro picked the worst possible target, a 32-year-old free agent wide receiver whose lawyers were probably already on speed dial. Now let's look at the receipts that show why this backfired so spectacularly. But before we even get into the receipts, understand the scale of what happened in that 72-hour window. We're not talking about one drunk live or slip-up at 3 a.m. We're talking about 3 consecutive days of escalation, with each broadcast getting longer, louder, and more legally damaging than the last. People were screen recording in real time, reposting on TikTok, mirroring on X. The clips multiplied faster than his team could have ever scrubbed them, and his team didn't even try to scrub them, because Offset kept logging back on like nothing happened. That's not a man who lost control of his messaging. That's a man who never had a plan to begin with. And here's the wild part nobody's saying out loud. The lives weren't even reactive. They weren't responses to something Diggs said, because Diggs hadn't said anything. They weren't responses to something Cardi posted, because Cardi was on tour grinding through her set list. They were unprovoked. Offset essentially walked into an empty room and started swinging at ghosts. And every swing landed on himself. Alright, let's open the quote bank. I'm gonna walk y'all through the actual words, not what people said he said, but what he actually said. Buckle up. Receipt number 1, the Selena Powell FaceTime leak, January 2026. On her podcast Two Girls from Mars, influencer Selena Powell dropped a screen-recorded FaceTime that allegedly featured Offset describing, and I quote, what he'd do if he caught Buddy, saying he'd beat him, strip him, and shoot him in the knees to end his football career. The audio went viral within hours. When I heard this clip, I had to hit pause. The man was laughing in parts of it. Bro said what? That's the dumbest flex I've ever heard. You don't laugh while detailing felonies on a recorded line. That's not gangster. That's a confession waiting for a subpoena. And let's not skip past WHO leaked it. Selena Powell isn't some random fan with a burner account. She's a podcast personality with a documented history of releasing private celebrity content. So Offset, knowing her reputation, allegedly stayed on a FaceTime call with her long enough to detail a violent threat against a known NFL player? That's either staggering arrogance or staggering carelessness. Either way, it tells you everything about the headspace this man was in. He wasn't being careful. He was being consumed. There's a difference between a private rant and a recorded confession, and the second you're laughing on camera about ending somebody's career, the line is gone. Forever. Receipt number 2, the No Sweat Bar, October 31st, 2025. On his surprise album Haunted by Fame, dropped on Halloween while Cardi was visibly pregnant with another man's child, Offset rapped, how the F*** you leave Jordan for Rodman. Asterisk, branding himself the franchise GOAT and Diggs as the eccentric sidekick. When I read those lyrics, I was like, brew, did you really just compare yourself to Michael Jordan on a song nobody asked for? That line right there? That's where he lost the plot. Nah, you can't say that and expect grown people to take you seriously, especially when the woman you're talking about already filed for divorce. And think about the rollout of that album. Halloween night. No proper marketing window. No single build-up. Just a surprise drop dressed up like a creative flex but reading like a panic move. The streaming numbers told a story, moderate first-day spins, a sharp drop-off by day 3, and 0 radio traction. The bar that was supposed to be the gotcha moment, the Jordan Rodman line, got clowned in comment sections within an hour of the album going live. People weren't debating the lyrics. They were debating whether Offset had even read what he wrote before recording it. That's the worst form of viral, the kind where the audience laughs at you instead of with you. Receipt number 3, the April 5th live declaration. On Instagram Live, Offset opened with, hello. Yeah. Non-stop, baby. Y'all can't get rid of me. I'm like cancer. I mean, you can't get rid of the cancer. He then went on to claim Diggs cheated on Cardi over 8 times, predicted Diggs would owe $500,000 a month in child support, and said the baby looks exactly like me. Bro really compared himself to cancer as a flex. When I saw that clip I had to do a double take. Is he serious? You're not the disease, my guy, you're the symptom. That's the kind of audacity only somebody who hasn't slept in 3 days can produce. Pause and let that 8 times claim sit with you for a second. 8. That's a specific number. Not a few. Not multiple. 8. Where did that number come from? Who counted? Was it Cardi who told him? Was it speculation? Was it something he made up on the fly to sound credible? Because the moment you specify a number that high on a live broadcast, you're inviting either a lawsuit for defamation or a follow-up question you can't answer. And Offset, who clearly didn't have a lawyer on standby during these broadcasts, kept doubling down. Every additional sentence was another potential exhibit in a future deposition. He wasn't venting. He was building somebody else's case. Receipt number 4, the court filing, February 25, 2026. This one's not Instagram. This is a real, stamped, court-processed legal document. Offset formally requested DNA paternity testing for at least 2 of Cardi's children, including the infant publicly attributed to Diggs. The judge split the request. The DNA test on the Diggs baby? Denied. The other child's test? Approved. Yo, when that ruling dropped I was like, OOF. The court literally told him no on the one child he was screaming about online. That's a public, documented L right there in the case file. And read between the lines of that split ruling. The judge didn't reject everything. The judge approved one paternity test and denied the other. That tells you the court took his concerns seriously enough to engage, but also had enough evidence in front of them to determine the Diggs baby wasn't a viable claim. Maybe there's already a private DNA result from Diggs' side. Maybe there's medical documentation Cardi submitted under seal. Whatever it is, the court saw something Offset doesn't have access to. So while his screaming "I already know it's mine" on Instagram, the judge, with actual evidence, already knew it wasn't. That gap between what Offset thinks and what the court sees? That's the entire problem in one sentence. Receipt number 5, the sit-down confession. Earlier in 2025, Offset sat for a recorded interview and admitted, "I made a lot of mistakes. I should respect her way more. I made bad decisions as a man. Like stepping out, like, I gotta take that on the chin." This is the same man now claiming he's the victim. When I re-watched that confession against the April Lives. Different planet. Different person. Pick a lane, brew. This is the receipt that quietly destroys his entire 2026 narrative. You can't go on a podcast in 2025 and admit, on tape, on the record, fully sober, fully composed, that you were the one who broke the marriage by cheating, and then turn around 6 months later and rage stream about your ex's new relationship like you're the wounded party. That's not consistency. That's not even hypocrisy. That's a documented contradiction that any opposing attorney could replay in a courtroom for a jury and end the conversation in 3 minutes. The internet has receipts now. Permanent ones. And every time Offset opens his mouth in 2026, he's contradicting the man he was in 2025. That's the quote bank. Now let's connect the dots on when all this actually went down. Here's where it gets crazy. Y'all didn't notice this though. The dates aren't random. They are pattern. That FaceTime? Surfaced in January 2026, exactly 2 months after the November 13th, 2025 birth. That's not a guy reacting in the heat of the moment. That's a man stewing for 60 days then exploding on a private call he didn't know was being recorded. 60 days is a long time to sit with a feeling. 60 days is enough time to talk to a therapist, to call a manager, to consult a lawyer, to go to the gym, hit the studio, channel it into a hit. Offset had 60 full days, 2 months of sunrises and sunsets, to find a healthy outlet. Instead, the pressure built up like a cooker until it exploded on a recorded call with a known content leaker. That's not impulsive. That's a slow-motion self-destruction with intermediate decision points he kept failing. Now check the album drop. Haunted by Fame dropped October 31st, 2025, 2 weeks before the baby was born. Halloween. While his legally still married wife was 9 months pregnant. So Offset really thought dropping a Disrespect album the same week as labor was a flex? That's terrible timing, brew. Any person with one functioning advisor would have waited. But Offset isn't operating with advisors. Clearly, he's operating off raw spite. Picture the optics of that for a second. A 9 months pregnant woman, exhausted, swollen, days away from delivery, turns on her phone and sees her legal husband dropped a project mocking her relationship with her unborn child's father. That's not just bad PR. That's the kind of move that radicalizes neutral observers against you. Mothers, in particular, do not forget that timing. And mothers buy a lot of music. Mothers move a lot of streams. Mothers run a lot of Twitter accounts. Offset didn't just lose the news cycle, he lost an entire demographic in 24 hours. Then peep this. The court filing for the DNA test? Stamped February 25, 2026. The Detroit casino lawsuit for $100,000? Filed March 30, 2026. The Florida shooting? April 6, 2026. The Cardi Diggs DC reunion footage? April 8, 2026. That's not coincidence. That's a man whose financial life, legal life, and personal life all collapsed inside a 6-week window. Stack those 4 dates next to each other and the math is brutal. February 25th. March 30th. April 6th. April 8th. That's roughly 6 weeks between the DNA filing and the reunion footage. 6 weeks where every single category of his life, courtroom, casino, hospital, ex-wife, produced a bad headline. Most public figures have O&E crisis at a time and bury it before the next surfaces. Offset is running 4 parallel crises with no PR firewall between them. They are not separate stories anymore, they are chapters in the same downfall. And the press is reading them in order. And the Patriots cut Diggs on March 13, 2026. Less than 2 weeks before Offset's casino lawsuit went public. So the man who Offset was threatening to end the career of was already a free agent. Diggs didn't need Offset's threats to lose his contract. He lost it on his own. Offset was screaming at smoke. Think about how humiliating that is when you actually break it down. You're publicly threatening to end a man's NFL career. The NFL itself already ended that chapter for him via a roster cut, which in football is essentially a soft layoff before a bigger contract elsewhere. Diggs is already in free agent mode, already fielding calls from contender franchises who need a veteran target. Your threats have zero impact on his career trajectory. They don't speed up his decline. They don't pressure a team to drop him. That already happened on football grounds. All they do is generate sympathy headlines that make him look like the wronged man, which makes him more marketable, not less. Offset accidentally became Diggs' free PR agent. Behind the scenes, Cardi and Offset have been tangled since 2017. 3 kids. 8 years. The 2018 Rolling Loud Roses moment, the 2023 cheating accusation post he deleted, the cycle never broke. So when Cardi filed in 2024 saying it was clean, no child support, we'll handle our kids, Offset really thought nobody would connect the dots when he flipped the entire script and asked for spousal support a few months later. That's when you know Offset doesn't have real advisors. Real ones would have told him, you publicly admitted you cheated. Don't ask for her money. The spousal support pivot is the moment historians of this saga are gonna circle as the point of no return. Asking your richer ex-wife for money after admitting on tape that you cheated on her isn't a legal strategy, it's a death wish for your public image. It tells the world you don't have a budget plan, you don't have a backup income stream, and you don't have a single advisor who knows what optics mean. Cardi's team must have laughed at that filing. Because the moment that becomes public knowledge, and it did, every casual observer instantly takes Cardi's side without even hearing her arguments. Offset filed his own indictment and stamped it himself. Diggs himself had model Eileen Lara file a confirmed paternity suit against him in November 2025, the same month Cardi gave birth. Multiple women, multiple kids, overlapping timelines. That's the chaos cocktail nobody on either side was drinking responsibly. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because Diggs has his OWN messy paternity timeline, you'd expect him to be vulnerable here. You'd expect Offset's attacks to land harder against a man who clearly has multiple women and overlapping family situations. But the inverse happened. Why? Because Diggs is not the one screaming. Diggs is not the one going live. Diggs is not the one filing motions in court with leaked screenshots. The chaos in Diggs' personal life is buried by his silence. The chaos in Offset's life is amplified by his broadcasts. Same chaos, different volume. And volume is what kills you in this era. Now check this out. Nobody's talking about this layer. Zoom into one specific word from that April 5th opener. Cancer. That's not just an edgy ad-lib. That's a man comparing himself to a terminal disease as his self-image. Detective brain on. Somebody who sees themselves as something that kills the host they attach to? That's not confidence. That's a man who has watched himself become unwelcome and is leaning into it. And Offset really didn't catch how that sounded? That's embarrassing. Linguists and behavioral analysts call this self-stigmatizing language, when a subject adopts the negative label they fear being assigned and weaponizes it preemptively. It's a defense mechanism. If you call yourself the cancer first, technically nobody can hurt you by calling you that, right? Wrong. All you've done is sign off on the worst possible characterization of yourself. Now every meme, every blog headline, every YouTube thumbnail has the green light to use the word he himself broadcast. He didn't insulate himself. He branded himself. With a slur. Voluntarily. Live on camera. Now zoom into the no-sweat line, specifically the word Rodman. Why pick Rodman? Because Rodman is famous for two things in basketball memory: rebounds and chaos. Hair dyes. Tantrums. The sideshow. Offset isn't comparing Diggs' game to Rodman, he's comparing his reputation to Rodman. That's a sneak diss disguised as a basketball metaphor. If Diggs had half the rap literacy, he'd have noticed this before the album rolled out for a full week before anybody even reacted. But that's the problem. Offset's the only one in this whole story actually trying to communicate through bars. Everybody else moved on. And here's the irony nobody caught. Rodman won 5 championships. 3 with the Bulls, 2 with the Pistons. Rodman is, factually, a Hall of Fame player who was essential to the Bulls' second three-peat. So if you're Offset, calling your rival Rodman while calling yourself Jordan, you've accidentally admitted that the supposed sidekick is also a champion in his own right. The metaphor doesn't insult Diggs. It elevates him into the same conversation as Jordan. That's a cell phone buried inside what Offset thought was a clever bar. You don't need a PhD in basketball to spot it, you just need to actually know the careers of the people you're invoking. Offset clearly didn't. Pattern forensics on the Instagram lives. Notice he keeps repeating the phrase, "I already know. I already know it's mine. I already know what happened. I already know they're not together." Real talk, when somebody has to say "I already know" 5 times in 3 days, they are not informing you. They are convincing themselves. That's a man arguing with his own reflection. And, Offset, didn't catch that he was leaking his own insecurity in real time? Nah, brew. Repetition under stress is one of the most reliable behavioral tells in interrogation psychology. When somebody confidently knows something, they say it once and move on. When somebody is insecure about a claim, they repeat it, sometimes with slight variations, as if the act of repetition will make the claim feel more true. Offset isn't trying to convince us the baby is his. He's trying to convince himself. And the louder the repetition, the deeper the doubt he's actually carrying. That's not strength. That's a man whispering a prayer at maximum volume. Legal fine point, and this is the one that's gonna sting. The Selena Powell audio was never officially refuted. No cease and desist. No takedown. No statement saying that's AI. His team called the My Kid LOL Instagram screenshot fake, but on the FaceTime audio? Silence. In legal world, silence near unrebutted evidence is a yellow flag. That clip is now a free-floating exhibit. Any lawyer for Diggs could subpoena it tomorrow as evidence in a harassment or restraining order case. If Offset had half a strategist around him, that audio would have been addressed in 48 hours. Instead it just sits there, getting replayed every time the story restarts. That's the move of someone who's desperate. Think about the asymmetry of that response strategy. They denied the screenshot, a low-stakes, easily-faked piece of text evidence, but ignored the audio, which is the higher-stakes, harder-to-fake piece of evidence. That's backwards. That's the exact opposite of how a competent crisis team triages. It tells you either his team didn't think the audio could be real, or worse, they know it's real and have been told by counsel not to engage with it because doing so would create a record. Both possibilities are bad for Offset. One means he's incompetently advised. The other means he's correctly advised that the clip is too dangerous to touch, which is a quiet confirmation in itself. And one more, the gambling phrase he dropped post-shooting, "Life is a gamble." Read that line against the $100,000 Motor City lawsuit and the Lil J $10,000 loan dispute. That's not poetic, that's a man telling on himself in metaphor. He didn't say, "I learned my lesson." He said, "Life is a gamble," present tense, as if the next bet's already loaded. That's not recovery. That's relapse coded. Now let's see how the media covered all this. Present tense is a giveaway. People who have moved past a chapter speak in past tense. Life was a gamble. I used to bet wild. Offset is still inside the philosophy that put him in the parking lot. The shooting didn't change his worldview. It confirmed it. And a man whose worldview is life is a gamble right after taking a literal bullet? That's not somebody whose next decision is going to be a calm, calculated career rebuild. That's somebody whose next decision is going to be another roll of the dice. Maybe at a bigger table. Maybe with a nastier crowd. The metaphor is the warning. Part D. Source cross-verification. Different outlets framed this whole arc completely differently, and you can tell who's eating off whose plate. TMZ framed it as a financial collapse story, leading with the casino lawsuit, the shooting, the dollar amounts. Their angle: rapper has gambling problem, gets shot near casino. Oh. Clinical. Detached. They are treating Offset like a Wall Street collapse instead of a public meltdown. Page 6 and People went the relationship drama route, Cardi getting in the white car, the reunion rumors, the ex-family affair at Capital One Arena. Their framing makes Diggs look like the romantic comeback story and Offset like a footnote. Tabloid-coded. Then Complex and Bet went the cultural context route, gambling pattern, repeat behavior, Lil J, Des Bryant, Eyebrow Darden, the whole losses pattern. That framing actually does Offset the most damage because it removes the one bad night defense and replaces it with documented multi-year pattern. Now some Offset fans are saying the leaked audio is cap, the album was just art, and the lives were taken out of context. But those are the same people who thought asking his ex-wife, who's worth nearly 4 times what he is, for spousal support was a winning legal play. If you still think Offset has a point after the court literally rejected his DNA request on the Diggs baby, you're just biased. The receipts we already laid out don't change because somebody on Twitter doesn't like the framing. The media trying to spin this for Offset's side cannot make the unrebutted FaceTime go away. But here's what nobody is saying. Mainstream media wants you to think this is a love triangle story. Cardi Offset Diggs. 3 names, 1 drama. That's the lazy frame. Here's what they won't tell you. This isn't a love triangle. This is a psychological warfare case study, and Diggs is winning by doing absolutely nothing. Look at the chessboard. Offset has fired off an album, a leaked audio, a court filing, multi-day Instagram lives, threats, a paternity request, and a spousal support amendment. That's 7 distinct moves in 6 months. Diggs has said exactly one sentence to a reporter. I told you about that. We don't talk too much about my personal life, but I heard about it. That's it. One soft, half-engaged line. Then he disappears, performs at 1,000 yards in 2025, gets cut by the Patriots, signs nothing, and shows up at his ex's concert with his mother. With his brother. Not a security entourage. Not a clapback crew. His mama. Bringing your mom to a public event in the middle of a media war is the most calculated move in this entire saga, and it doesn't even look calculated. That's the genius of it. Mom in the box seat is the visual equivalent of a polygraph test passed in front of cameras. You can't bring a mother to a fake reunion. Mothers don't show up to chaos. Mothers show up when their son says, "Ma, I want you to meet someone, and I want you to see her on her stage." That single image, Diggs, his mother, his brother, at Cardi's concert, torpedoed every narrative Offset spent 6 months building. And it took 0 words to do it. That's not coincidence. That's the most polished move in this whole story. Offset is playing checkers while Diggs is playing chess. Every Offset Instagram live makes Diggs look more mature by contrast. Every album bar makes Diggs look more above it. Every threat makes Offset look more unhinged and Diggs look more calm. Diggs didn't have to win the war, he just had to let Offset keep talking. And bro keeps talking. Here's the deeper layer. The industry is quietly rooting for Offset to spiral. Hear me out. The Migos broke up bitter. Quavo is still navigating his own grief and image rebuild after takeoff. Offset solo has put up middling commercial numbers compared to his ex-wife, who just sold out Capital One Arena. The label needs Cardi B's machine to keep printing. The label does not need Offset's chaos attached to it. Every viral live makes him a less marketable asset. The industry wants this fixed, quietly, with NDAs, with no more mess. But Offset is a puppet who thinks he's pulling strings, and the strings are pulling him straight into court. You have to understand how labels and management firms think during scandals. They don't care about your feelings. They care about your insurance value, your tour insurance premiums, your sync licensing potential, your brand partnership pipeline. Every threatening Instagram live raises Offset's insurance liability. Every shooting headline makes a brand sponsor's legal department flag him as a no-go. Every casino lawsuit makes a venue promoter ask, is he gonna show up? Before booking him. The damage isn't just emotional or reputational, it's financial in ways that compound monthly. Each headline doesn't just embarrass him. It shrinks his business universe. And here's the historical pattern. We've seen this exact movie. Public marriage. Public cheating admission. Younger man enters frame. Older established man can't accept being replaced. Older man gets louder while younger man stays quiet. Younger man wins by absence. Remember what happened with several R&B stars in the 2000s when their wives left them for athletes? The men who screamed lost their careers. The men who shut up kept theirs. Offset is repeating the same mistakes that ended several careers before his. We've seen this before, and bro is on the losing side of history. History isn't ambiguous on this. The volume strategy has a 0% success rate in modern celebrity divorce dynamics. Going public, going loud, going viral with grievances has destroyed every man who has tried it, without exception. There's no comeback story for the screamer. There's only fade out. The men who go quiet, lift weights, drop a mature album 2 years later, and let time absorb the news cycle? Those guys come back. The men who live stream their pain in real time? Those guys don't get a second act. They get a documentary made about them 10 years later, and not a flattering one. Authenticity layer, and this is the brutal one. Offset built a persona around being a husband, a father, a Migo, a fashion guy. 3 out of 4 legs of that table are gone. Migos? Done. Husband? Filing divorce. Fashion? Old news. All he has left is father, and now the courts are publicly adjudicating whose father he actually is. Offset's whole persona is manufactured, and it's falling apart in real time, in a court file, with a public docket number. The cruelest part of identity collapse is when the last pillar, the one you thought was unshakable, gets challenged in public. Offset could lose Migos, lose the marriage, lose the fashion deals, and still hold on to I'm a great father as the anchor of his identity. But once a court is examining whose biological children belong to whom, the last pillar is being interrogated by the state. A judge, someone with no emotional stake, is going through documents that determine the most personal possible fact about him. That's not a press cycle. That's a soul cycle. And once that pillar shakes, there's nothing structural underneath. That FaceTime audio we broke down? It's not about Diggs. It's about a man losing his mythology. Those Instagram lives we referenced? Not flexing, pleading. The album bars? Not disses, distress signals. The DNA request? Not paternal love, control. Every single move Offset has made since November 2025 is the move of a man trying to grab back a script that was already finished. And, Offset, really thought screaming louder would rewrite the ending? Nah, brew, the louder you yell at a chapter that's already published, the more people just see the publication date. The book is closed. He's screaming at a binding. The forbidden take is this: the trouble Offset is in isn't legal. It's not even financial. It's existential. A 34-year-old man with shooting wounds, a casino lawsuit, a denied DNA test, and an ex-wife getting in another man's white car after a sold-out tour stop. That's not a man with trouble. That's a man whose whole world model just got vetoed by reality. And he's the only one not reading the verdict. So what happens next? Mark my words, this story has 3 roads it can run, and all 3 end with Offset losing. Here's what's most likely gonna happen. Diggs is going to keep saying nothing. He's gonna sign with a contender team, maybe a wide receiver needy roster on a one-you-prove-it deal, and he's gonna let his Sunday tape do the talking through the 2026 season. When Diggs doesn't respond, Offset is gonna look desperate, screaming into the void. The lives will get longer. The disses will get sharper. And nobody's gonna care, because the algorithm only feeds you so long before it feeds you less. And once the algorithm cools on you, it's almost impossible to climb back. Engagement is a treadmill. The more you scream, the more it feeds you initially, and then the more it punishes you when audiences fatigue out. Offset is on the back half of that curve right now. The early lives went viral. The later ones are getting fewer concurrent viewers, fewer clips, fewer reposts. The platform is silently downgrading him, and he can't see it because he's still inside the broadcast. By the time he notices the metrics dropping, the story will already have moved on without him. The shooting investigation is going to keep developing. The FBI is already public about wanting more information, which means more details about who he was around, what he was doing, and why somebody pulled a trigger in a valet area are going to surface. Every new headline drags him back into a news cycle he didn't pick. The silence from Diggs is gonna hurt Offset more than any diss track ever could. Because in 2026, getting ignored is worse than getting dissed. When the FBI gets involved, the discovery process can produce details that the subject didn't want to be public. Phone records, location data, associates' names, financial transactions. None of that is information Offset has control over. Every leaked detail from that investigation has the potential to become a new headline, regardless of his wishes.
He's not driving the bus anymore.
He's a passenger on a bus where the destination is decided by federal investigators, and any sharp turn could put him into a worse legal position than he's already in. Now if Cardi and Diggs decide to make whatever happened in that white car official, and the DC concert footage suggests they are closer to ON than OFF, then Offset is gonna get destroyed. Watch what happens. The second Cardi posts a hard launch picture, every troll on the internet is gonna remix it with Offset's "I'm like cancer" clip.
The memes write themselves.
Offset will try to escalate, but every escalation just reconfirms Cardi's choice, not undermines it. A hard launch from Cardi B isn't just a relationship reveal. It's a cultural moment. She has tens of millions of followers across platforms, and the second a confirmed couple photo lands, it goes from gossip to fact in under an hour.
Every blog, every podcast, every sports talk show.
They all switch from alleged to confirmed. And the second that pivot happens, every old Offset clip, every threat, every cancel line, every "I already know it's mine" repetition, gets resurrected as receipts of how badly he handled the moment. The hard launch wouldn't just confirm her relationship, it would permanent mark his collapse. If Cardi drops a song addressing this, and she's been touring Little Miss Drama with bars that are already this close to Offset's name, that song will outsell anything Offset puts out next. Offset is not ready for what's coming if Cardi takes this seriously on wax. We saw what she did to him in 2018 with Public Clarity, and bro, she's older, sharper, and angrier now. And Cardi has a unique advantage in a rap beef. She has the receipts and the platform and the public sympathy.
Most artists pick at most two. Cardi has all three.
If she records a track that explicitly addresses the cheating, the album, the lives, the spousal support filing, that song doesn't just chart. It becomes a cultural reference for the rest of the year. People will quote it in arguments unrelated to Offset. They'll meme it.
They'll TikTok dance to it.
And the louder it spreads, the more permanently it embeds his lowest moment in pop culture memory. Looking at the bigger picture, this is going to be the moment everyone remembers as when Offset's relevance died. Not because he's untalented, he's actually a great rapper. But because a hip-hop career in 2026 is 30% talent and 70% how the culture feels about you. And the culture is currently watching a man threaten an NFL receiver, get shot, owe casino 6 figures, and ask his richer ex-wife for spousal support.
That's not an L. That's a legacy. Hip-hop is uniquely brutal about narrative.
In rock or country, an artist can survive scandals because the music gets separated from the man. In hip-hop, the man is the music.
Your authenticity is your art.
The second the culture decides you're not him anymore, your bars don't carry the same weight.
Your drops don't get the same respect. Your features dry up because nobody wants the energy.
That's the territory Offset is walking into, not because his skill level dropped, but because his story changed.
And in this genre, story is everything.
5 years from now, people are gonna look back at April 2026 as Offset's biggest L. Bigger than any chart miss, bigger than Migos breaking up, bigger than the divorce filing. They're gonna remember the parking lot photo.
The "I'm like cancer" line.
The denied DNA test. Offset is watching the culture move on without him. And there's nothing he can do, except, terrifyingly, more of what got him here.
The casino lawsuit is gonna grow.
The FBI investigation is gonna produce more details. The Diggs camp is gonna keep silent and keep collecting data.
And Cardi's tour is still selling out.
Whatever happens, one thing's clear. Offset already lost.
And the scariest part of all of this for him?
He won't realize the ending was already written until it's too late to change it. By the time the FBI files become public, by the time the next album underperforms, by the time the next live broadcast hits 12,000 viewers instead of 300,000, the verdict will be permanent. The culture moves fast in 2026.
It doesn't wait for you to catch up.
And right now, it's leaving Offset behind in real time, frame by frame, headline by headline, and is still recording himself trying to chase it. If this breakdown showed you something the headlines won't, drop a like, hit subscribe, and turn notifications on so the next expose lands in your feed first.